As he does seemingly all the time, Deion Sanders is dominating the college football transfer portal.
You are Locked On Buffs, your daily podcast on the Colorado Buffaloes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Buffs. I am your host, Kevin Borber. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire could feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. Terms and conditions apply. We are also brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day for free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you guys for tuning in. Coach Prime, Colorado. People are like, they have a mass exodus problem. They're losing a lot of players. Well, they're also gaining a lot of talent, and they are bolstering the trenches in a big way. I talked about it a little bit yesterday, but yesterday's live stream on Sunday, or yesterday was Sunday if you didn't know, was all about Cormani McClain. Today, we are talking about the additions that they made, because I think Colorado is seriously going to be at least big. They're going to have the talent to contend. I won't say for a Big 12 title, but they'll be in the contention for around the top spot, be in the mix for the top spots in the Big 12. I would say teams with like Utah, Kansas State, maybe even Texas Tech or other schools that I would look out for. But Colorado landed 3 transfers on Sunday, and all 3 of them are in the all 3 of them are in the trenches or from the trenches, and they are all going to likely have quite the big impact. They're experienced. Starting with, I think it's Rayan Buell. He's a senior out of New York, 6'3", 277, defensive tackle. Obviously not the biggest, but he's a depth piece. They have Anquin Barnes. They have Quincy Wiggins. They have guys that Shane Cokes, Torian Carter. They have so many guys in the trenches that it's okay to take a flyer on a guy who had 30 total tackles last season and 4.5 sacks. Obviously, he's not the biggest guy, but he brings in someone that they could rotate in. He brings in someone that, hey, we want to mix things up. We want to give these guys some rest. Obviously, not the biggest. He'll get bigger, and obviously being around other guys in Boulder will help him out. He was not the biggest defense lineman that they landed yesterday, though, and that award has to go to Deion Hayes, who, if you guys didn't see Coach Prime's retweet or repost on X, I guess formerly known as Twitter, someone, I forgot who it was, tweeted Cat Williams bit where Cat Williams was like, quit talking, you know what? And the caption was Coach Prime was, you shouldn't have been talking. S starts with an S. And then the caption was, when Coach Prime sees Pat Narduzzi or something like that. And so obviously, if you guys don't remember, last season, it was actually last May, I remember writing about it. I remember doing episodes about it. Pat Narduzzi came forward and said that what Coach Prime was doing in the transfer portal was bad for college football, was a bad look, was just overall something that he didn't approve of. And now, a year later, Coach Prime has 2 of his best pass rushers on the Colorado roster. Deion Hayes was teammates with Samuel O last season, Samuel Kunalola. He had 45 total tackles, 4 sacks, a forced fumble. He was the homegrown kid in Pittsburgh. He's from Pittsburgh, PA. Spent all 4 years there. Got better each and every year. He saw his total tackles number go from 3 to 16 to 16 to 16 again. So his sack numbers went up from 2.5 to 3 to 3.5 to 4. So this guy is someone that sees a steady improvement each and every year. So 5th year in college, a 5th year with the Buffs, not his 5th year, but a 5th year with the Buffs. He adds someone who could start. He's a potential starter for this Colorado team, realistically. He's physical, he's big, he's strong. He's just someone that has proven at the Power 5 level. And to make matters a little more painful, I guess you could say, for Pitt, he left Pitt because he didn't think they could contend. He said in an interview or in a comment to the Post-Gazette that it was something like along the lines of, I don't think we could compete. I'm also not confident in the offense. So obviously at Colorado, they have no issues with the offense. They are quite good on offense with Shedeur Sanders, an improved offensive line, weapons all over the place. An interesting running back room that now that Alton McCaskill's gone, but nonetheless, they have a lot of talent there. They're going to be really good on offense. So look for Deion Hayes to start right away for the Buffs. I think he could work his way in to the rotation, or at least he should. Also, they added a tight end transfer from UNLV, former Colorado kid. I think he's a Boulder native or an Aspen native, I think it was. Didn't play at UNLV. More depth to that room. I still think if they could land a proven tight end, that'd be ideal. Obviously, losing Chimon Mateer was a big loss simply due to the fact that that room was very shallow. The next best tight end, I guess you could say, is Savell Smalls, and he's a former five-star pass rusher that didn't pan out on the defensive line. So they obviously need more help at the tight end spot. But let's talk about their other addition yesterday. 6'6", 366 pounds, Peyton Kirkland, transferring in from Texas, an offensive tackle. He's going to go in, compete for that right tackle spot right away. I think he will. I don't think anyone's won that job, and honestly, that's okay. It's hard to win a job in spring. Realistically, I think it's like 15 practices. So for someone to not really put a claim on it, it's disappointing a little bit, I think we could say. But that doesn't mean it's not impossible to win a job. I think it's a lot of programs around the country, they use spring as kind of like a way to figure out who's going to be like when they head into fall and summer, who's going to be getting the starting reps. But that doesn't mean it's set in stone by any means. So Colorado goes in the trenches, gets 3 monsters. I think realistically they still need running backs. I know Penny Boone is a name that a lot of people have thrown out. I know Dallin Hayden is a name that people have thrown out. I think they need tight ends and linebackers still a lot. They haven't added any linebackers yet. I know the Charlotte/Michigan transfer is someone that could be in the mix, but either way, I think they need a couple more linebackers. That's where I would go if I were Coach Prime. Obviously, I think a lot of people are getting caught up in the fact that they're losing talent in the portal, but you have to look at it from Coach Prime's perspective. And realistically, they haven't lost. Realistically, I would say maybe one starter. They've lost guys who were fighting for rotational snaps. They were losing depth pieces. They were losing guys who didn't play much at all. So Coach Prime's going to be fine. The more guys that leave, the more that he could bring in and the more that he could address needs. Now, is he going to get all of his needs in the portal? I don't know. It's going to be really tough to see because obviously it's one of those things where if you can't get it in the portal, there is no more getting it. Like there is no more additions after the spring window. There are no like, okay, we're going to see at fall camp. We're going to get more guys coming in here. No, it's not going to be that easy. Juwan Mitchell was a very rare exception where he gets kicked off the team like a week before the game, and then all of a sudden Colorado adds him. I think that they have done quite a good job in the portal thus far. I do think they still need some work. When we come back, I'm going to be talking about the departures, who hurts the most, who Colorado can live without, and more. But first, a word from our sponsors. This episode of Locked On Buffs is brought to you by our sponsors over at LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. It helps you find the professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write your job description, making the process even easier and quicker. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Welcome back to Locked On Buffs. Appreciate you guys for tuning in on this fine Monday and making me your first listen of the day. We are talking about transfer portal shenanigans. Obviously, Colorado's had quite a bit. I did a whole thing about Cormani McClain yesterday. I'll dive into it a little bit again, just because I feel like, just in case you didn't see that episode, don't want you guys to leave here. I want to tell you guys everything you need to know, and then you can watch it after, because I went super in depth on where I went wrong and everything in between. But Colorado has lost some players in the transfer portal, and I've already addressed this many times, and I'm going to continue to address it because I think people are blowing this out of proportion. They lost as of the past couple days. This one hurts a little bit because he wasn't on campus very long. Eric Brantley Jr., the edge rusher, Not sure if it was like a depth thing, like maybe he just didn't see a role for himself. Maybe he felt like maybe he just want to get back closer to home. He's from Georgia. Maybe it just wasn't working out in Boulder for him. Obviously, I think that's kind of like the hard part about recruitment is sometimes you think a situation's better for you when it's may not be. Today, they lost J.J. Hawkins, the defense lineman who transferred in from Ole Miss. They also lost Adam Hopkins, or I said Hawkins the first time, I hope. J.J. Hawkins and Adam Hopkins. J.J. was a defense lineman who came over from Ole Miss. Didn't really do much for Colorado. 5 total tackles. Played in 10 games, started 1. Didn't really do much. Adam Hopkins was a 4-star receiver that moved over to corner. I think he played both ways in high school. So either way, it was a move that was expected, I guess you could say. Like he projected to play at either position. He had 4 total tackles for the Buffs last season. So obviously didn't get the most out of him, another Georgia kid. And then anyone else, Alton McCaskill, we talked about, and then Cormani McClain recently. But you look at what they lost, and I think, and I've talked about this before, but I want to say it again because I feel like a lot of people want to get on Coach Prime for losing this talent. And if you're going to get on Coach Prime for something, you got to get on him for either one. Last year's portal class was terrible. I think there were a few bright spots, but to bring in over 50 guys, and I would say about 11 of them were good, or at least 11 of them hit. Maybe we'll go 15 at the most. That's bad. That's very bad because if your roster is built through the portal, and we'll just say they had 15 guys that hit out of 50, that is let's see, a 30% hit rate, which isn't great considering a lot of his roster is supposed to come through the transfer portal and supposed to be built through the transfer portal. So not great. So if you want to get on Coach Prime for anything, I think it should be for his portal choices, maybe his roster building method. But losing these guys that they've lost this far, not as big of a deal as people are making it seem. It's really not. I'm not trying to downplay anyone. I'm not trying to say these guys weren't good. They just did not have a role. They did not have a major impact for the Buffs. J.J. Hawkins, I think he had a lot of potential. Obviously didn't reach it at Ole Miss, and he didn't reach it at Colorado. So he's probably going to have to drop down to a Group of 5 school or an FCS school. Adam Hopkins, it's tough because I had a lot of expectations for him. I thought he'd maybe find a role at receiver, and then once they switched him to corner, I was like, oh, maybe he'll contend for a starting spot there. Eric Brantley, didn't see much of him. Don't know much about him. We obviously never saw him play a game. Alton McCaskill hasn't played a meaningful game since 2021. Obviously, his father posted something where it wasn't really working out, where his role wasn't what they were hoping it would be. Demoy Kennedy, linebacker from Alabama, didn't do much. It was kind of a flop, if you will. I thought he would be able to use his athleticism and kind of be the staple of the linebacker room, and he wasn't. Shimon Mateer, tight end, never played for Colorado. Went through, I think it was 10 spring practices and called it a Colorado career. Didn't work out. I think realistically, that one might be the biggest loss thus far. Out of everyone they've lost, I think it could be him. Vito Tisdale didn't really do much for Colorado. Kari Mans, role player, reserve. Cormani McClain didn't work out. He fizzled out. Tavares Dawson was someone who had a role. But you just look at all these guys. I think Savion Washington was the only guy that was like a consistent starter. And even then, he wasn't going to start this year. Like they lost a lot of guys who were depth pieces at best. And then to talk about the Cormani McClain stuff, just to touch on it again. Realistically, and we're seeing it in his market. We're seeing it in reports. Pete Nakos from On3 was like, yeah, the way it ended in Boulder has hurt his recruitment with other schools. Right now, the 3 schools that apparently Cormani has heard the most from, or 3 schools that are kind of rumored to be like the most, like the schools that are after him the most, USF, which is obviously his hometown, UCF, still in the state of Florida, Big 12 program, and then Memphis. So there's a good chance that Cormani McClain does not end up at a Power 4 school. Cormani McClain did not put in the work at Colorado, was not ready to be a starter right away, which is okay. You know, he was an 18-year-old kid or 19-year-old kid, however old he is, and wasn't ready for the college lifestyle in the sense of he wasn't ready to watch film all the time. He wasn't ready to attend practices when needed. I think he was still of the mindset that this was high school where he's the guy and he can do whatever he wants. And that's just not really how the college football scene works. And so I think realistically, he has a lot of growing up to do. Now, him coming out and saying that Coach Prime or he wants to play for a coach that isn't playing for clicks and he wants to be developed. Yeah, I think that's a bold move. I think that was a stupid move. Realistically, throwing a coach under the bus after you were publicly called out for not living up to your end of the bargain is a bold strategy. It kind of just seems like you're the bitter ex. It seems like it, like I talked about it yesterday. Breakups aren't pretty. They only get uglier when someone is kind of continuing the issues. When someone's like, you know what, we've been broken up for a month now. We're both like trying to move on, and then all of a sudden it's like, you know what though, her family super annoying, or you know what, she can't cook, or she likes to, I don't know, I don't enjoy how she chews her food, whatever it may be. It's like all of a sudden you're just bringing it back around, and like you're like, you know what, I got to get my shots in. And I just don't feel like he needed to do that, but that's his prerogative. And obviously it didn't work out in Boulder. It's okay, but we'll see how it works out for him in the future. I think this is probably going to be a wake up call for him, which is okay. I don't think anyone should expect a 18-year-old kid to kind of have life figured out right away, because obviously not many of us did, and not many 18-year-olds in the future will. It's very rare for someone to just automatically understand what they're supposed to do in every aspect of the game. It's very rare that someone um, who's highly rated like that hits the ground running and is just like the best thing since sliced bread. It's just not what happens very often. So we're just going to have to wait and see how it works out. But again, to circle back, they're not losing much. The more guys they lose that are like Cormani McClain or JJ Hawkins, where it's like potential that wasn't lived up to, the better, the more talent they could bring in, the more they can address their needs. So it's not the biggest thing in the world, but obviously you never want to see wasted potential. But obviously Colorado has kind of seen some wasted potential as of late. When we come back, I'm going to be talking about the latest on Colorado recruiting. This episode of Locked On Buffs is brought to you by our sponsors over at FanDuel. Let me tell you about our sponsors at FanDuel. It's playoff time in the NBA and the NHL, and baseball's in full swing. And FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers can join one. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. Got the ads mixed up. Apologies. That's $150 win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel's America's #1 sportsbook. Welcome back to Locked On Buffs. Appreciate you guys for tuning in every single day. Make me your first listen of the day. Free and available wherever you get your podcast. We are talking about Colorado recruiting. Colorado is looking to make a statement. And right now, there's a lot of noise surrounding one Mr. 5-star quarterback, Julian Lewis, and Colorado. He did an interview with John Garcia Jr. At the Rivals camp. I think it was yesterday, the day before, in Atlanta, and just kind of talked about he likes how Colorado talks to him. He likes that he has the chance to play early, and he was also sporting, good job to you internet sleuths, a Colorado towel, which, I mean, doesn't mean a lot of things, doesn't mean everything, but Colorado's obviously on his mind. It's a big deal, and it's just one of those things where if they could land him, I think that would kind of show people that Coach Prime is bought in for the future. Obviously, he says he is, but again, you never know until we get there. So let's talk about Colorado's recruiting. They've obviously are in the mix for Julian Lewis, and then they are the favorites for 3 recruits right now. 4-star Alex Graham. I know John talked about him when he was on the show when we were talking about Cormani last week. Realistically, Steve Wiltfong is projected him to be a Colorado, like he's Steve Wiltfong, who's now with On3, so it's not 24/7 Sports anymore. For Steve, projected that Colorado lands him. He says, I like Colorado, and talking to sources with knowledge of the recruitment, they like the position that Colorado is in at the point in the process with Alex Graham. They offered him February, but this is a young man they've had on the radar for a long time. Programs like Michigan and Penn State are also after him, Alabama, Oregon, and a couple others, but Colorado is well positioned for one of their top targets in 2025. He's ranked as a 210th player in the country. Montrez Walker, linebacker, former Michigan commit. He's visited Ole Miss in Miami. He went to Colorado in the fall for a game and fell in love. He has a nice relationship with Coach Hart, and then he's also expected to be visiting, I think, in the upcoming weeks. And then they're also in the mix for 3-star tight end Corbin Lazier. and he put a RPM in favor of Colorado for Corbin. Said they had him on campus for a game in the fall where he got a chance to soak in the atmosphere and the energy around Coach Prime's program and the outstanding fan support for the Colorado has. The kid is just a pure football player. This is Steve Wiltfong talking, saying one of the best two-way players in the state of Tennessee, dominant on both sides of the ball, and he's a guy that Colorado has identified that they want in their program, and it's trending well for them. So pretty big deal. They are also hosting a running back for a multi-day visit, which is a pretty big deal as well. 4-star Byron Louis Luggage, out of American Heritage in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. He's not going to make his commitment anytime soon because schools like Miami, Ohio State, and Florida State, and Michigan, they're all pushing for him. But Colorado is getting that mix, and that's what Steve Wiltfong's saying. Steve Wiltfong is acknowledging the fact that Colorado is in the mix for this guy. Excuse me, not Steve Wiltfong, different On3 reporter, Keegan Pope. He said that Colorado is making an impression. He said, we talked a lot prior to the visit. And this is him talking about Miami, because obviously those are other schools that are interested in him. He talked a lot to Miami, and Colorado having a chance to kind of get their way in there is a big deal, because when someone's recruitment is narrowed down to a few schools, if you're able to slide your way in there, that's a huge deal, especially when Miami and Florida State are in the mix for a Florida kid, because a lot of Florida kids, they don't mind sticking around in Florida. They don't. Obviously, you just want to make sure that you're landing all the top talent available when you're in the state of Florida, because everyone wants those guys. And Coach Prime is coming for Florida, and obviously he knows just how talented of a state it can be. So Colorado's making some moves in the recruiting trail. They're making moves in the portal. I think people need to relax on their transfer portal departures. I don't think it's that big of a deal. You guys comment below. Is it a big deal, no deal, slight deal? Let me know what you think. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. I'll see you guys tomorrow.